one thing that you need to know is that there is no Christmas like that Christmas of Nigeria. Oh, that Christmas in Nigeria is so much fun. The best Christmas in the world is going to be where? It's going to be in Nigeria, December. That's where you need to be. That's where the fun is at. But now listen. Now I'm on the flight, right? I'm going to Nigeria. This flight is leaving from where? From Johannesburg. So in the flight, it's a lot of Nigerians that live in South Africa that they are going home for Christmas, okay? Did I know that there's so many Nigerians? I saw them at the airport that day. They are going to Nigeria. They're going back home for Christmas. They bought everything from Woolworths. they bought everything from Woolworths, Game, Bep, all the stores. I see them. They are going back home for Christmas. So I have to be on this flight with these Nigerians. Okay, fine. So we get on the flight. Flight is moving. Everyone is happy on the flight. The vibes are vibing. Like this flight, everyone is excited to go home. Everyone is talking. Everyone is laughing. So, you know, we are also just sitting next to a nice guy. We're just talking. The next thing, you know, for me, I'm like, okay, this flight, we're just here in Africa. We're going to another African country. You know, this shouldn't be a long flight. I think it was 6 hours or something like that. Man, guys, 7th hour. I think I was tired, so I fell asleep. I'm like, man, we are still on this flight. Hi, man, the flight is not landing. The guy sitting next to me, the guy says, you've been sleeping since. And I'm like, what's going on? He said, there's trouble now. I'm like, what's going on? Apparently, there's traffic in Lagos. Did I even know this? I didn't even know this, guys. I didn't even know this was a thing. Man, there is traffic in Lagos. There is no parking space for our flight, okay? So the flight is roaming around the air because we don't we don't have space to land in Lagos. At this point, we have been roaming around forever, and I think the airplane is going to run out of petrol. It was horrible. And then when it's going to be an announcement, everyone is like, shh, we are all hoping for good. We are all hoping for good news. We want space. We want parking space, guys, for the airplane. There is no parking space in Lagos. The spaces are full. Everyone is coming from all over the world. I didn't know this, like, that everyone comes, like, so much, you know, come back home for Christmas to a point that there's no space to park at the airport. You know, they've been updating us what's going on. So now they're like, oh, no, it looks like we might have to go and land in a neighboring country. What's the neighboring? Damn, I forgot the neighboring country. But guys, it's possible that we might have to land in a neighboring country. And then people will take other means of transportation to actually make it to their country. I was like, oh, what the hell? I've never had such a thing, guys. Can you imagine? It's like, I'm going to South Africa. When we get to Joburg, we're in the sky. Then there's no parking. And then they tell us, no, you might go to go land in Zimbabwe. I would be so frustrated. Everyone got frustrated in the flight. But one thing about Nigerians, guys, they will pray. If I tell you, so I'm like, you know, they announced that we might have to go land in a neighboring country. And then the guy next to me didn't even say, let's pray. I just said, Father God, oh, and then the whole plane is praying. The whole plane is praying. Oh my God. We keep roaming around, and every time there's an announcement, everyone is just like waiting in anticipation because everyone is hoping for good news. And then finally, they announced that, oh, we found the parking. Oh, God, oh, thank God, oh, God, oh, God. What a miracle working God. I mean, I would do it again, guys. I would roam in the sky again for that Lagos Christmas. I would risk it again and get on the flight and look for parking for 2 hours to get to that Lagos Christmas. That's how huge this Christmas is. This is like the most important Christmas. If you've never been to a Lagos Christmas, shame, I'm sorry, you're not African.
For real, no sound for it. Say no sound for the video. Um, that's strange. My bad. Gotta roll it back.
Push into performance. Why do we fail at the point of implementation into all those ideas? Now, I'm going to speak very, very briefly because I did not prepare a paper. It is the speakers who spoke this morning who have prepared my paper for me. And these are the points that I picked up. The chairman, I don't know if he's here with us at present, Engineer Uyedele, he mentioned potential. That's the word that you always hear in every conversation about Nigeria and its future. Potential. But potential is nothing without that potential being turned into performance. So we can continue to indulge ourselves with talk of potential, but unless we find a formula to turn it to performance, it is mere self-entertainment. And he said, what is the problem? Why is it that we cannot turn all that potential into performance? Why do we fail at the point of implementation? All those ideas and all those papers that we produce again and again, administration after administration. I'm hoping to explain the why. Professor Perikuna, I hope I've not mutilated his name too much. He said, we don't need a strong man. We need strong institutions. And he's so right. And he said 1999 constitution is not a constitution. We need rule of law because everything flows from the constitution. The rep for Mr. Silva Subramanian, he said there have been calls and desire in the Nigerian populace for new ways and concepts of doing things in Nigeria to usher in a new dispensation of progressive and far-sighted leadership in Nigeria, which will excite the dormant potentials of the country. There's that word again, potential. Barrister Samuel Adituyi, he said, the police today is an embarrassment to government. And he asked, who will bail the cats? And my long-standing friend, Dr. Tunji Abayomi, he said, and stress that 1999 document is a fraud. He said, the key word is decree. And he said, neither military nor National Assembly, nor indeed the whole of the government can give us a constitution. It is not in their gift, because the constitution is made by the people. And he said, and I like this expression, a united nation of ununited people. That is the challenge. How are we going to unite a nation of ununited people? It's all very well to speak of unity. We want unity. The question is, what kind of unity? Because it comes in different forms. And he said, most essentially, in relation to the process by which a constitution is made, that it is the procedure that validates the constitution. Not so much the written words that we lawyers may draft. It is the process that legitimizes. Now, I want to speak about the new Nigeria. My group, the Fatherland Group, is an international network of forward-thinking Nigerians. It is a think tank. We think about the road ahead, whilst government gets on with the business of governing and dealing with the day-to-day issues. So what does the new Nigeria look like that we have configured? It looks like this. This is an orange. This is the new Nigeria, according to the Fatherland Group. Why the orange? In its roundness, it represents unity. Do you see the skin that wraps the continents? That is union. That is Nigeria. But what do you get when you peel the skin? What lies underneath it? You see the segments of the orange, do you not? Each comfortable in its own space, and together making the whole, the union, the unity. Each segment of the Orange Union, as we call it in the Fatherland Group, is a nation, an ethnic group of Nigeria. No more the pretext of one Nigeria. There will be the flexibility that is built in to that kind of union. And what does that flexibility look like? It looks like this. You see, when they're all together, the fingers of the hand, what does it represent? Power. Yes, together we are stronger. That is the language of the one Nigerians. But it is also a handicap, is it not? Because what you need, in addition to the strength, as occasion dictates, is the flexibility of the individuality of the fingers. That is the new Nigeria, where the fingers can move. Yoruba nation, Ijaw nation, Hausa nation, Kanuri, etc., etc. The flexibility. Together, they then represent force. So I hope with those brief words, and if you want more detail about this Orange Union concept, please just write down this web address. So fatherlandgroup.org/orange. Remember, the new Nigeria.
Fatherlandgroup.org, that's .org/orange. I'm certain that we would never eat an orange without remembering the Fatherland Group from today.
Me, I no agree with this group. Oh, Dele Ogun is somebody I like as an author. I like what he did with the fatherless people. But on this one, sir, I don't understand where you are going with it. Well, let me see. The first time where they go on his website, basically, let's see. So it's a fatherland group is a global network of our thinking Nigerians armed with a new understanding of our past, our present, and our future. New understanding. Okay. So it started by who first started advocating for what he believes is the new way. We must aim at a looser structure for Nigeria while preserving its general pattern. A structure which would give the origin the greatest possible freedom of movement and action. Structure which will reduce the power of the center to the absolute minimum and yet retain sufficient national unity for practical and international pro- purposes. Okay. Look at Chief Abulo, Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Each group, however small, is entitled to the same treatment as any other group, however large. Opportunity must be afforded to each to evolve its own peculiar political institution. Each group must be autonomous in regard to its internal affairs. In dividing Nigeria into regions, it's therefore necessary to group together only people who, through affinity or general experience, are known to be capable of working together harmoniously. The guiding principle in dividing the country into regions must therefore be ethnic classification, cultural affinity, common problem, and perhaps administrative convenience. Ha. Ah. Okay, let me see. The Orange Union, a new road to a promised land for Nigeria, and a Fatherland Group initiative. Why Orange Group? The civilization concept of the Orange Union is inspired by nature gifted to mankind by ways of the orange citrus fruits. As with the fruit, it is a concept whereby humanity enjoy the peaceful harmony of a union within this sphere. Within the separate segments and this unity, this distinctly and equivocally covered a soft internal border, while the sheer cover is in the much finer peeling, acting as the external border to the rest of the world. In the Orange Union proposed for the Nigerian, each segment represents a union historically and geographically. Wait, I think I've seen this idea somewhere. Um, um, how did they humiliate the northern group? Why they up that? Let me see. think I saw this. I think that was 1950. Yeah, I think 1953. Oh, 1956. Sorry. But just this is not new. I don't know why this guy is something historical. I've seen somewhere, you know. No, I've seen what led to the Northern group working out of 1956 Constitutional Conference. Hey guys. No, this is what I said. I don't see what I've seen this somewhere before. This idea that this man is, these orange group people are throwing around. Let me show you what I mean. So in 1953, okay, I was 750. This is Paolo, right? So this article was on Vanguard, right? On July 2016. July 2016. It started by Yinka Odumakin, may so rest in peace, I think. Right? Yeah. Past recent. Say, well, a professor of African American and African study at the University of California, Davis, recently stopped by at the jazz, blah, blah, blah. So let's see. Here's where I'm going with this. So Adebayo was clear about his mission in this book when he stated, as the following chapter illustrated, despite the consistent divisive narrative that presents, defends, and contends the diverse and sometimes contradictory interests of Nigeria, many ethno-nationalist, ethno-religious groups, there is a constant gesturing toward a nation of aspiration, a Nigerian grand nation that is assumed, surpasses, or subdue the many nations forced to live together within the Nigerian Federation. See where the orange people are going. The aspiration, unfortunately, has remained aspiration as the events being chose to open the book illustrates. This is in 1953. That is before the independence. And then they have this idea. Political independence. It was in 1953 when Anthony Enaro, one of the leading lights of anti-colonial struggle and a prominent members of the Oduduwa, Awolowo-led Action Group AG moved the motion that Nigerians should be independent in 1956. as the federal parliament. The notion should have been unanimously supported by members of the parliament if an impossible country was not in the making. An impossible, okay? Inauro said that in the preamble to this notion on the floor of the Federal House of Representatives, that any proposal short of full political independence for Nigeria has ceased to be progressive view because Nigerian nationalism has moved forward from that position. Adebiwe correctly posted that in the response that shows the fruit line of Nigeria, the fourth line of Nigerian constitutionalism in the late colonial era, and since then, Sir Ahmadu Bello of the Northern People Congress (APC) (NPC) introduced a declaratory motion substituting the phrase "as soon as practicable" for the year 1956, proposed by Inauro. In an undisguised reference to the superficial of the Nigerian nationalism, which Inauro and his southern patriots were leonizing, Bello added, 6 years ago, there was no Nigeria, but merely a collection of communities, very different in outlook and mode of life. This one are pre-independent. The Northern threatened to leave the Nigeria over the quest for independence by the South in anticipation that the NPC, which had more numbers in the House, was going to win the vote. The NCNC and AG members in the House of Representatives walked out of the House. The meeting of the House was adjourned and members of the NPC met very unfriendly crowd outside Lagos. Now, this is when opposition strong. This is when there was a party. Well, this is actually even before the Nigerian independence, right? This is in the 50s. No be politician now will get to. More will continue. They were called all sorts of names, and I think this is not exactly the scenario the Tunanja always referring to, but something along this line when they say that this youth song till they humiliate the Northerners when people were killed. Remember? Now they were called out sorts of names. Therefore, they left for the North. A retaliatory move by the Northern leader in Lagos after the adjournment on March 31st, 1953, self-governing motion, came during the tour of the Northern region by the AG led by Chief S.L. Akintola. It was viewed by the Northerners as an invasion of another man's territory. God, these people. So all these cracks, they still find a way to forge ahead together. This is 53, right? It was viewed by Northerners as an invasion of after they were emulated in Lagos. So I see that. That's where that animosity is coming from. It was while Akintola and his group were in Kano that a riot broke out. Several people lost their life, while many were wounded. After the crisis, the NPC member issued an 8-point program to the colonial government to the effect that until their demands were met, they would not return to the house in Lagos. Okay, interesting. We'll see. It may be necessary here to reproduce this program as we can properly situate when Nigerian unity is not negotiable. Mantra became a sing-song. The North asked for the following. 1, that each region shall have complete legislative and executive autonomy, which with respect to all matter except the following: External Affairs, Defense, Custom, and West African Research Institute. It makes sense. 2, that there should be no central legislative body and no central executive or policy-making body for the whole of Nigeria. How did we go from there to what we have? Because this is exactly what they don't want, but this is exactly what we have. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's go to the demand number three. That there shall be central agency for all regions, which will be responsible for matter mentioned in paragraph 1 and other matters delegates to it by a region, which is exactly. And what are those agencies that they are talking about to only be central, which is external affair, of course, normal, defense, also understand, custom, West African exercise. These are things that purely has to do with international bodies, which is good. So now I'll move to 4. That the central agency shall be a neutral place, preferable in Lagos. This was saying, okay, which it was though. I think this is what they have coming in from independence. That the composition and responsibility of the central agency shall be defined by the order in council establishing the constitutional arrangement. The agency shall be non-political body. That's number 5. Number 6, that the service of the railway, air, post and telegraph, electricity and coal mining shall be organized on an interregional basis and shall be administered by public cooperation. This cooperation shall be independently and covered by the statutes under which they are created by the board of experts with a minority representation of the regional government. Perfecto. All the revenue shall be levied and collected by the regional government except custom revenue at the port or port of discharge by the central agency and paid to its treasury. I want to believe this is exactly what they have after as soon as they got their independence. I mean the country as a whole. The administration of the custom shall be so organized so as to ensure that good consigned to the region are separately clear and charged to do this. Each region shall have a separate public service. That's the last one. There can be no other explanation as to why those who made this proposal in 1953 became the very people flogging those making demand for a restructure that do not go far, like they did at the National Theatre in Lagos in 1991, when the late Alao aka Bashorun led us to the foyer of demands in national conference, then the oil that was discovered 4 years later. Beautiful demands. So what now happened? We don't want to go back to the region again because few people have taken over the system. That's why they eliminate the regional system and bring party politics. That's the only way you can capture the whole country. And that's always led me to who are those group of people that got us this party politics. They know what they are doing. The very people who put this beautiful demand together in 1953 now pretend as if they don't know what we are talking about. Today, because of the gain of iniquity of a dysfunctional unitarist arrangement, we misname a federation. To all intent and purposes, the sharp division of 1953 still defines us till today as our clashes of civilization define our position on critical issue. Fact. Had they been we capture vividly this clash of civilization as it lived through the pages of Nigerian newspaper in 1950s. For instance, he quoted the Nigerian Tribune, the voice of Western region of February 1950, an editorialist that British colonialism, which forced together the different ethnicity group in Nigeria, have failed to fulfill its mission for which it set out to. The unity of the North, East, West they had promised us they have achieved to our horror and disunity. That's 50 years. This is crazy. About a year later, another newspaper, Nigerian citizen, editorialized that the new telephone line linked Kaduna, the capital of the northern region, with Lagos, Enugu, the major city of these two southern regions, signified the gaining of momentum toward bringing the people of Nigeria closer together, though urging Nigeria to sink prejudice as much as possible for weather patriotism and dismissed Southern polemic expression by the Tribune editorial as extremism of the South and its newspaper. The West African pilot responded to this by dismissing Citizen as a very patent imperialist pet and added that the alliance of imperialism and feudalism will henceforth be fought by the Holy Crusader of the Nationalist Army as they enter the first phase of psychological warfare. The main thrust of discussion at Adebi Unity Reading was that the inspiration to nationhood will remain a mirage if the lack of consensus that characterized the relationship of the Nigerian ethnic group in 1953 continue to define our nation. Facts. As it was in the 53, we had hardly agreed on anything. No wonder. Still persists today. Corruption among the elite. It's like 60 years ago, man. Niggas, it's like today, people. To count ourselves accurately has been impossible. Even up to today, we still are not able to count ourselves. We find it difficult to hold free and fair election, my lord. If we fix voting age to the 18, some civilization will line up 6 years old. Damn. We cannot standardize admission criteria into our schools, leading to the recent cancellation of post-UME in our universities. We retire some people on tenure policies and cancel some policies for other sets of Nigeria. Different direction. The Holy Book asks if two can work together without agreement. Nigeria is answering that question by tying the legs of many racers and making them to run in different directions. The result is pitiful for all over the place, and the very reason why Nigeria lies prostrate as the intensive care unit of failed nation. Redressing 1953 requires revisiting the 8-point agenda of the North of 1953 and remove the bills jarring to create a Nigeria where all constituent units are free to move and develop at their pace and according to their civilization. Let each section concentrate on its area of comparative advantage and assign its priority. If this one did not see the light of day in 53, why are we still on that orange fatherland? Can we think? Huh? I think we're better than this. A mode that seeks to use the instrumentality of the federal government of Nigeria to turn the whole country into a grazing land, for instance. You see? Negates federalism and can only breed conflict and perpetuate feud. I disagree. Nigeria since 1953, after representative disappears in Lagos, which riots break out in Kano. Afterward, have not set anywhere to agree on the terms of their unity concretely and spell it out. Okay. So the unity that is not negotiable today was not negotiated anywhere. Wala day. The closer to such negotiation was the gathering of thought as symbolized by the 1994 National Conference, around which some consensus have been built. Today it is possible, imperfection notwithstanding, and those dismissing the document should wake up and smell the coffee as the game in town has expired. I agree it has expired, but the direction, the change that you think it should replace the expired it's not acceptable. It never makes sense to me. So that's why I disagree with the fatherland. I disagree with the fatherland. 100%, totally disagree. It's now one guy when he's listening to often. Ella mochi, ella mochi, kitty, ella mochi, kitty, ella. Is this guy?
Call your doorbell camera company and cancel the subscription. This brand new subscription-free mini Wi-Fi camera provides more security.
It's about politics and power. It's about international affairs. It's about history. My name is Edmondo Bilo, and I welcome you to another edition of State Affairs, coming to you from State Affairs Studio in Ibadan. What is the subject of today's broadcast? It's about Obafemi Awolowo and the Nigerian Civil War. What role did he play in the war? What is your perception of the war? Remember, you also have the opportunity to contribute to this discourse. Awolowo is quoted to have said, "Any war by the North against the East on any account whatsoever would be an unholy crusade for which it would be unjustifiable to shed a pint of blood." Why did he make the statement? Before making the statement, let's trace Awolowo's history before the war. He was a former premier of the Western region. And don't forget, this is a continuation of the discourse on Obafemi Awolowo. We started it on Splash FM, and we've brought it down to the studio created for history. This is a class of history. So let me refresh your mind a bit. Starting from the crisis in the Western region. The crisis in the Western region was a fallout of the battle of supremacy between Obafemi Awolowo, leader of the Action Group, and his deputy Samuel Ladoke Akintola. It is a story of the past, but the analysis of the events of the time are lessons of history. Awolowo, after relinquishing the premiership of the Western region in 1959, elected to move to the federal parliament for national leadership. He became the leader of opposition, and Akintola, his deputy, left federal parliament for the Western region to take the place of his political leader as the premier of the Western region. No sooner had this happened than both men engaged in a power struggle over the principles of government. Awolowo, as leader of the party, insisted on party supremacy. But Akintola at some point believed in government supremacy. Because of the argument that followed, a state of emergency was declared in the region. Why the emergency was declared? Awolowo was dealing with the Coker Commission, set up to investigate the finances of the Western region. At the time, the followers of Awolowo saw the move by the Akintola government as a plot to humiliate the leader. Awo at the time was also at loggerheads with the Tafawa Balewa federal government. To add insult to injury, Awolowo and 30 of his political associates were accused of plotting a coup to overthrow the federal government led by the Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Consequently, they were charged to court for treasonable felony, conspiracy to commit a felony, and conspiracy to effect an unlawful purpose. One of those that were charged of treason alongside Awolowo is Chief Ayo Adebanjo. Chief Ayo Adebanjo tells me the story. I asked him, was there a plan to overthrow the Tafawa Balewa government? Chief Ayo Adebanjo is presently the leader of Afenifere. So he answers my question here. Was there a coup against the Balewa government?
Were you among those that were sent to Ghana to topple the Tafawa Balewa government?
We went to Ghana to study Nkrumah's form of organization, the CPP. You know, they were the ruling party there. As an organizing secretary, we went there. That was what happened. There was no question of calling there to come and topple anybody.
But
that was the allegation when they wanted to get rid of the opposition.
Was there a plan to remove Tafawa Balewa?
We only opposed to Buhari government. There's no plan to remove him democratically.
There was no plot
I don't
remove him forcefully.
I don't know about any plot to remove forcefully. But I know we are doing everything just the way APC are trying to remove Jonathan.
Sam Ikoku was part of the AG.
Yes.
He was an Awolowo man.
Yes.
So listen to what he said.
Yes.
He said, we were fed up with the way the Nigerian system, the Nigerian state, and the Nigerian government were operating. We were deeply committed to a change of government, and we saw that waiting for elections would not produce any solution to the problem. This was what we did. We started preparations for it, and the preparations had gone very far, and I believe we would have pulled it off. But unfortunately for us, our leader was so kind to the Nigerian police that he had a police informant among his planners, and so the police knew every move we were making, and so it was easy to trip us up. Our leader even became the number 2 citizen in the country. I felt it was time to tell the country the truth so that our history would be correct. So all I'm saying is that, yes, there was an attempt to overthrow the government. Yes, I took part in the attempt. Yes, it failed, thanks to people like MD Yusuf and co. Chief Adebanjo, what do you have to say?
That's his view. That's not my view. That's SG Koku talking, not Adebanjo.
A member of the AG.
Look, during the Chisable Fellow Day, late Professor Olobamiru gave evidence that he was a member of the planning committee to school. But when he was questioned at the trial, that's another matter.
You ran away. You did not come to the country during that treason trial, right?
Yes.
Why did you run away?
I didn't run away. I will give you the background. By the time they were arresting people for, after we left a rally for detention, it was Shifaulo who said we should not allow all of us to be arrested here, and that he was not going to leave the country. But there must be people who will be championing our cause abroad, telling what is happening at home. That was how myself and Ikuku were sent abroad, not because we ran away.
Ikuku was in Ghana too?
Yeah, he was my leader in Ghana.
So if Ikuku accepted this, why did he choose to accept?
Unfortunately, you should have asked him.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Chifayo Adebanjo there, talking about the coup. He said there was no coup. But one of his colleagues wrote in his book that there was a plan to overthrow the government of Tafawa Balewa. Dr. Yemi Farumbi, it's good to have you on State Affairs.
Thank you, Edmund. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Was there a coup? Was there a plan to overthrow the Tafawa Balewa government?
Now you have to rely on evidences and do an analysis of possibilities. Certainly, Shifaulo and the Action Group pose a formidable opposition to the Tafawa Balewa government of MPC-NCNC coalition. And I'm sure they've never expected or anticipated that level of opposition, which had started with during the campaign when the ordinarily royal and traditional northern leaders were forced to go on campaign for the first time. They never liked that. And they had hoped that they will have a parliament that would probably be a rubber stamp. They weren't expecting a leader of opposition that would be as vocal, virile, and perhaps as determined as Awolowo. It's obvious to me that the action group under Chief Awolowo, they were determined to replace the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa government because it wasn't the kind of government they expected. They had hoped they would have a progressive government. There'd be an alliance of the NCNC and the action group. They have not succeeded. So they thought there must be other ways. Now, we have the evidence of Ikuku, we have the evidence of Papa Adebanjo. I have problems with S.G. Ikuku because later in life, S.G. Ikuku became a government agent.
When you say government agent, what do you mean?
He became a collaborator with government. He became a member of the intelligence agency of Nigeria, particularly by the time of later days of IBB and all through the Abacha years. S.G. Ikuku was a furious communist, Marxist at the beginning. But it's evident that he became part of government. Quite a number of people too did. So whatever he has said before became different from whatever he said later. So you have to now do an evaluation of it. Particularly that after 1979, a number of them became anti-Awolowo.
Okay, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, you are making some point, and to confirm the point you are making, I want to bring in Chief Ayo Adebanjo again to corroborate the point Dr. Yemi Farumbi is making.
I thought you were going to confirm the story.
No,
the reason I came to you with this book.
No, I've heard it before. You are not embarrassing me. It's not new to me. If you knew what transpired after later between Chief Awolowo and S.G. Ikuku, when it was described as if you are not giving somebody who is perfidious, there must be a reason for it. You see, those of our group with Awolowo, are you listening? There are so many people in this country that when we remember what the role they played, we shake our head. After all, and Awolowo was with us. But later on, what did he do? He went with the opposition. So many reasons for many people changing their view when the brew is hot. If you remember, at a certain stage, before Awolowo was incarcerated, when Balewa started their opposition on us, they shock number one for Awolowo, shock number two for Awolowo. Those were the time when she wrote to William and others were resigning from the action group. Almost every day, leading members of the party, those whom the leader built up. So on that, and on occasion, all those we knew, Awolowo knew, were in the periphery of the party. He summoned the party, and expelled all of them. So there will be no question of anybody shock number one, shock number two. All those we knew that are not steady, we expelled them at that time. So it is not strange.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Yes, Dr. Farumbi. That's Chief Ayo Adebanjo there.
Yes, I think he's quite right. The only one I don't agree with is on Chief Anthony Nauru.
Okay.
Chief Anthony Nauru might at a point in time have had to part ways, as it were, with Chief Awolowo, but he never abandoned his progressive principles. Even when he had to become the chairman of the MPN in the Midwest, I think it was called Bender, he quickly left the party. He didn't join UPN, but I was quite sure that all through his life, Nauru was a radical.
Why were they jumping ship?
In his own case, I will not say he really jumped ship. I think that after the creation of the Midwest and after the military intervention, particularly under the Ironsi regime, and when Gowon came, they were going to have an ad hoc constitutional conference. Anthony Nauru led the Midwest team. Awolowo led the Western team. Jakande led the Lagos team. So there were certainly different responsibilities. As a minority, Midwest was in fact the only region that stood by Nigeria in 1967. When they held the meeting on the very first day, the North agreed to a dismantle of Nigeria. And the West supported. Of course, Lagos did. But at that meeting also the East did. We haven't had the Civil War at that time. But the West, they were a minority. I mean, the Midwest were a minority. They believe that their own survival is dependent on the survival of Nigeria. And that if they were left alone, and you have to dismantle Nigeria, it was possible the Midwest cannot stand on its own. And it's a multitude of ethnic nations. The East then was largely Igbo with Calabar or Guja rivers. The West was largely Yoruba. The North was dominantly Hausa Fulani. So they looked at their own survival and stood solidly all through the Civil War. The Midwest stood solidly for united Nigeria. There was also somersault in his own case. But there was a ideological somersault in the case of Ikuku. He abandoned the radical left to move to the extreme right. It might be as a result of differences with Awolowo, I don't know. Or it might be as a result of the fact that he became very cozy in relationship with successive military government. So that's why I disagree with
Ayo
Adebanjo. Because after 1993, it was who led the NADECO against the military regime, who fought, defended, and struggled for the presidency of Abiola. Of course, that was not for ethnic reasons. It was for basically ideological reasons. So for me, Nauru stands as a specimen, a very good specimen of an ideologically progressive mind in this country.
We are laying the background to Obafemi Awolowo's role in the Nigerian Civil War. And my guest is the author of the book Controversy Within the Dynamics of Office Politics. My guest is Dr. Yemi Farumbi, He read geography at the University of Nigeria and Obafemi Awolowo University, then University of Ife. He did his master's degree in public administration at the University of Ife, where he was the first winner of the Peter Odumosu Prize for the best student in the MPA examinations. He is a member of the Nigerian Institute of Management, Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, and Society of Nigerian Broadcasters. My guest is a renowned broadcaster. Yemi Farumbi was General Manager, NTV Ibadan. NTV Akure, now NTA Akure, and he later became Chairman, Directorate of Information, Oyo State. Dr. Yemi Farumbi would become Chairman, Broadcasting Corporation of Oyo State, Chairman, Daily Times of Nigeria, and Chairman, Osun State Broadcasting Corporation. During the presidency of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, Yemi Farumbi became Nigeria's ambassador to the Philippines and Cambodia. We are discussing politics. Yemi Farumbi is a politician grounded in the politics of the Nigerian state. Obafemi Awolowo, former premier of the Western region of Nigeria, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment with hard labor on the 11th of September 1963. Before sentencing him, Justice George Shudende Shuemimo of the Lagos High Court listened as Awolowo made a statement. Awolowo, in this statement in court, says he welcomed any sentence that may be imposed upon him, but that his only concern is not for himself, but that his imprisonment might do harm to Nigeria. Did his imprisonment do harm to Nigeria, Dr. Farumbi?
Well, yes, to the extent that we lost the opportunity to utilize his knowledge, his wisdom, even as leader of opposition. And I would think, and I can say this very boldly, the story of Nigeria would have been different if they had not imprisoned him. I would like to recall what Tony Nahuru said in the hallowed chambers of the House of Representatives, that we are embarking on a journey, the start of which we know, the end of which we don't know. We are still on that journey. If Awolowo had not been sentenced, perhaps there would not have been the rigging of the elections of 1964. Perhaps there would have been no disagreement between NCNC and MPC in 1964. Perhaps Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, as ceremonial president, would not have been unwilling to invite Tafawa Balewa to set up the government. Perhaps there will have been no massive rigging, no need for the massive rigging of the 1965 elections in the West. Perhaps if we didn't have that massive rigging, there will have been no Operation Wetye. The large-scale destruction, killing of people. Perhaps if all of that had not happened, nothing would have affected the conscience of Nzegu and his colleagues. perhaps there will have been no military intervention. If there had been no military intervention and subsequent reaction by the North on May 29 in the name of Araba, and the counter coup or the second coup, how will I call it, the return march of July 29, perhaps there will have been no massive killing of the Easterners in the North. Perhaps we would have had no civil war. The story of Nigeria would have been different.
So he was right.
Absolutely.
He was released from prison on the 3rd of August, 1966, about 4 days after the counter coup. Some said Ojukwu released him. Others say it was the Gowon federal government who released him from Calabar prison.
Officially, it was the federal government. But as at that time, given the unease in Nigeria, the regional governor for East had physical possession of Awolowo. He was in Calabar prison. The states had not been created. If he was unwilling, it would have been possible to release Awolowo. Because at that time, Ojukwu didn't recognize the leadership of Gowon. And this is why you have to look at the events. Now, we are privileged. We are looking at so many years after and interpret it correctly. It was obvious, and it's, at least to me, that it's perhaps true that those who engineered the first coup really wanted to install Awolowo.
You think so? That Zogo and Co wanted to install Awolowo?
I think so.
What gives you that impression?
Because they felt that the government was guilty of 10%, was guilty of nepotism, was guilty of too many things. And there were indications, particularly if you read the books of those who survived, that part of their determination was that to correct events in Nigeria, they needed a radical leadership.
And Awolowo was the man?
They thought, at least, of all of them, that was the most radical. So they obviously wanted to install him. And I have a feeling that perhaps Ojukwu subscribed to that, because it could have physically made it impossible to remove Awolowo. It could have moved Awolowo from Calabar prison to another prison where it would have been possible to release him. After they had to send a plane to go and bring him. So if he was not willing, so I will put it this way: the federal government under Gowon needed, of course, the release of Awolowo for political legitimacy. And I am told, I don't have the evidence now, that there was an attempt, in fact, in the dying days of Ironsi, there was perhaps a conclusion to release him. Because I understand that Fajuyi, who was the governor then,
When's the last time you woke up and felt good? Like really good. As good as, well, this guy. Oura Ring helps you get enough sleep and enough steps. It also helps you manage your stress so you can see what your body really needs. Your body has a voice. It's time to start listening.
Had been making a preparation to receive him. And Ojukwu was important, was significant in Iran's company. So it would be difficult not to credit him with anything in that release. So I believe released by Gowon and with the support of Ojukwu.
One of the books I'm recommending for this class is Why We Struck, the story of the first Nigerian coup. Why We Struck, written by Adewale Ademoyiga. Read this book. Read this book for a clearer understanding of why Nzogu and co struck on the 15th of January, 1966. You would find this book on udarabooks.com. And there are WhatsApp numbers pinned to this post. You can get the books on those WhatsApp numbers. So you can always request for this title, Why We Struck. We are discussing Obafemi Awolowo and the Civil War. General Yakubu Gowon was on ground to receive Awolowo at Ikeja Cantonment when his plane landed in Lagos after he was released from Calabar prison. Why did he accord Awolowo that honor?
Political calculation. Gowon was operating a fragile government as at that time. He just taken over, not because he was the leader of the coup, but because he appeared to be the only acceptable person.
Who was the leader of the coup?
General Murtala Mohammed.
The hot-headed Murtala Mohammed.
Yes. And really wanted to pull out the North from Nigeria until the American ambassador and the UK High Commissioner intercepted. So Gowon need to build a support. We had 4 regions: the North, the East, the Midwest, and the West. As at that time, it was only the Midwest that Gowon could really talk about as being Nigerian. The East, given what has happened in the return match, had lost confidence in Nigeria. The North started from wanting to pull out of Nigeria. They were advised not to. The West didn't belong. And they needed the West. So political calculation, political legitimacy, get Awolowo to support you. Perhaps then you be able to have 3 regions against 1. I don't believe it's any love.
On the 11th of August, 1966, there was a meeting of Yoruba leaders of thought, and it was convened by the governor of the Western region, Colonel Adeyinka Adebayo. The purpose was to rally the Yoruba nation to adopt a common position in the planned national constitutional discourse. Can we look at that meeting?
Yes, we can. Governor said there will be an ad hoc constitutional conference. I mean, of course, the very basis of Nigeria had been shaken. He will quote from Gowon's speech himself, because he did say the basis of unity was threatened and perhaps no longer there. So we needed a new constitution. And there are 4 regions. So the West need to articulate its own position. Don't forget that Awolowo had been marginalized to irrelevance, as it were. He'd been in prison for years, and his opponents are taking over. But the opponents were not in charge of the people. That's why there was large-scale Operation Wet here. So there was need to make the oppressors of Awolowo either to accept his leadership and for Chief Awolowo to be willing to accommodate them. So there was need, because the mind of the majority of the people, the minds were with Awolowo, not with them. So they had this meeting to adopt the Western region's position on which way Nigeria. And it turned out not to be not what Awolowo thought. He had come out as usual with his paper, philosophical, the reason for a federation, the basis for a federation, and the kind of federation we must have, the number of units we could have, and all of that. But a lot of people were more anxious supposed to get is forgiveness. And to get perhaps its recognition. So the very first thing they moved in the meeting was that he should become their leader. And the motion was moved by those who had spent the last 5-6 years destroying whatever had been his political empire. And he refused.
He refused. Now, before we go further, Professor Onobamiro testified against him before he was sent to prison. Why did he do that?
I would think that it's also for political convenience.
Because Onobamiro was one of the intellectuals in Awo's time.
Yes, he was an intellectual, he was a minister of education, but was not particularly ideologically positioned at the center. Yes, he was minister of education implementing free education. The conception of free education belonged to Olayode and Ajasi, who are not professors anyway, but who were political ideologues, who looked at welfare of people, who looked at the number 2 item they agreed on in 1951 was to fight for freedom from ignorance. Ignorance and diseases. That was their number 2. Is that freedom from ignorance that translated to free education? From disease translated to free health? He was not there then.
So at the meeting of the leaders of thought, they wanted Awolowo's forgiveness. By this time, Ojukwu in the eastern region had refused to recognize the authority of Gowon. Ojukwu seized federal assets in the east and confiscated federal revenue. He detained a civilian Nigerian airway flight that landed in Enugu. He refused to attend meetings of the Supreme Military Council. It was clear Nigeria was headed for a civil war. Did Awolowo react appropriately to Ojukwu's actions?
I think what he did I think I'll put it in two ways. There were his thoughts and there were his actions. And I think the first was, of course, the West was in a very weak position. All the troops in the West were largely from the North. Because historically, the Westerners had always looked down on military. They've always thought it's only uneducated, lazy people that will join the army. So really, when you get to the army, then outside the medical corps and the education corps, you rarely find the Southwesterner. So all the barracks and military cantonment in the Southwest were peopled and officered by Northerners. Before the July event, perhaps there were some Easterners there that were in Abeokuta. Some of them in Ibadan. But when the return march happened, for their own safety, they ran. So the leadership of the army, Nigerian army in the West, were the arms of the Northerners.
Were all the Igbos in Abeokuta, did they run away, or some of them were also massacred?
Absolutely massacred, and the remaining had to run. They didn't run away, they ran in the interest of their life.
Why were they taken unawares? I keep thinking, they've dubbed the first coup an Igbo coup. And
the first one was never an Igbo coup.
It was not an Igbo coup?
It was a Nigerian coup.
Can you explain?
It's Ademoye, a Yoruba man, is he an Igbo?
The author of this book?
Yes. Very, very intellectual.
It was not an Igbo coup.
It wasn't an Igbo coup. It was a coup of genuine Nigerians who were worried about Nigeria. Yes, they were young, generational. It was the generation that brought them together. It was their willingness to risk their life, to have a better Nigeria that brought them together. It wasn't to put an Igbo man or create an Igbo empire. No. Igbo himself is Midwest Igbo. In normal parlance, he is not an original Igbo. So he wasn't doing all of that.
Ifajuna was Igbo.
Yeah, was Igbo.
Onwatuegu Igbo.
Yes.
Most of the officers were Igbo officers.
What joined them together was intellect, intellectual revolt. We wanted better Nigeria. Most of them were educated. They were university graduates.
Most of the army officers, senior army officers killed were from the north. The premier of the western region was killed. The premier of the northern region was killed. Michael Okpara was not killed.
That was a failure of individual operators.
Tell me more.
In planning the coup, they broke Nigeria into territories, and each person had roles he had to play. Ezegu was in charge of the north. When he moved, he sought even the support of Ojukwu, who never gave him support.
But Ojukwu knew about the coup.
Not before. He was not party to the planning of the coup, from everything I've read. But of course, for you to take over government, don't forget Ezegu was just a trainee officer, and he was using trainees. And Ojukwu was the commander in Kano. So he needed him. He reached out to him and he didn't give him support. So if it was an original Igbo coup, of course, Ojukwu will give him support and he will have taken over. Because they have the largest collection of military in the north. But he didn't. In the west, of course, it's succeeded because the environment was against Akintola himself. So it was easy. And of course, because he reacted in a different way, he decided to fight. He decided to shoot. No other person did that. He was the only one. And of course,
when you say he decided to shoot, how?
When they captured his deputy. The military boys can be something else. They captured his deputy. So it was the deputy that led them to his house. It was he who spoke to him. He didn't know the military was, there would be a military movement. When he now discovered that Fani Kayode had military boys waiting, he also had prepared for such days, not of military, but of civilian. He thought the operation where people would probably come to his house one day. So he took his submachine gun and opened fire.
You know, mind you, he had been warned of a coup.
Yes, which was why a day before the coup, he flew to the north to discuss it with Sardauna. And Sardauna said it was impossible.
It was impossible.
Because he was sure of the Northern Command. And he was sure of the loyalty of Agui Ironsi. And Agui Ironsi had no reason not to be loyal to them. It was not to be the GOC. It was not recommended by the military. The outgoing General Everard or what? Never recommended him.
Did he recommend Babafemi Ogundipe?
He didn't either. I think he recommended Malamari. But Balewa and Sardauna opted for Ironsi. He said, let's keep seniority. So why would Ironsi want to fight them? No reason. Absolutely none. So he had no reason to be part of conspiracy.
They didn't see Nzogu coming.
Nobody. And that's what happens to politicians.
But there was movement of troops in Kaduna. It was clear.
It was just for training. And he does that regularly. Even from evidences, those troops didn't know what they were doing until they got to points of action. They thought he would carry them, he would train them, but it was a revolutionary. And they are always in the midst of decadence, some revolutionary. In the midst of darkness, there'll be one source of light.
Wasn't he too brutal? Wasn't he too brutal? The way Ahmadu Bello was murdered. Was Nzogu not too brutal?
When you look at it today, you would think so. But that time, a failure at that point was the end. And you know, he's a military man, a young man, well trained. He went to Sandhurst. Sandhurst was the best training center in the British Commonwealth. He knew that if he failed, he's death. So it's either you die or you kill. And he knew if he was unable to penetrate the Sardauna hegemony, that was the end of the coup. And he believed that the feudalism they were talking about, you know, any Marxist, there are many in the South there, any radical, you criticize the feudalism in the North. And he was seen as the epitome, was the Sardauna, next in rank to the Sultan. So he wasn't just a premier, he also had religious control. So for him not to fail, you don't operate like, how would I call it, a shooter. You do what you call a spray shooting. I must kill this one, because if I don't, that will be the end of the exercise. And he was the leader. So he assigned to himself the most difficult assignment. So if he failed, everything.
The guys in
but
the
looking
East.
backward now, it will look brutal.
Because he took Ahmadu Bello's wife along.
They took Soden's wife along too.
The guys in the East did not execute theirs.
Now, let us look at the truth of the circumstances. They just had a Commonwealth meeting in Lagos. And all of them have been going away. And most of them were aware there would be a coup because they had better intelligence through the embassies. But we still had Archbishop Macarius around, who was visiting the East, as at the day of the action. You have to look at the international dimension to it. You attack Okpara with Macarius. So that was a possibility. I'm doing my own analysis now.
Yes.
And in this matter, we have to be objective analysts. Will he kill Archbishop Macarius alone? So he had to stay home for Macarius to leave. But coup had already started. And because it was Ifeanyi that had responsibility for that, a lot of people now interpret it. And they may be right. But from the way I look at the international dimension to it, it may just be, let's wait until Macarius will leave. Action had happened in the North. It had happened in the West. There was no need for the Midwest because there was a new state, a new region, and there was no environmental hostility to the incumbent government the way it was. And Dennis Osadebe, who was there in the political calculation, was not a significant element. So it is possible that sheer incompetence of Ifeanyi or ethnic sentiment or international political sentiment, out of those three could have interfered with him.
But was there any reason to take out Okpara? The environment was friendly to Okpara at the time.
Actually, I don't believe it could have been part of the original plan. I wasn't part of it. I'm able to read it. If those coup planners thought that the man to lead Nigeria was Awolowo, and his political partner is Okpara, why would they want to kill him? Let's look at it objectively. Part of the causes of the coup was the 1964 federal election. Action Group, NCNC formed OPGA. In the absence of Awolowo, they had a joint leadership, as it were, Okpara and the wife of Awolowo. And they campaigned together all over Nigeria. So when you look at it analytically, it will have been strange if people thought that this rubbish, and they thought this rubbish was based on feudalism. There's no feudalism in this. They thought there were partners and collaborators with feudalists in the West. They eliminated them. They thought there were also collaborators in Lagos. That had to do with Okutiebo, Balewa. They eliminated them. So what would be the reason for dealing with the co-leader of what they saw as the only hope for Nigeria?
Azikiwe left the country before the coup.
If Azikiwe had been in the country, they will eliminate him.
You think so?
I believe so.
Why did he leave? Did he have premonition of the coup?
He probably did, and because that is him. I believe that Azikiwe will always look for safe ground. He did that 1951-52. You had to have a lecture, a very radical lecture against the British government. He now planned the lecture. It was still an NCNC there. was not an Ashegrupa. Every young man loved Azikwe. They loved his intellect. They loved his grandiloquence. And they followed him. But came lecture time. Azikwe has disappeared, as usual.
Why?
I think there's some cowardice in him.
Some cowardice.
I think so.
So the point you make is that it wasn't an Igbo coup.
I'm clearing my mind in that.
We are discussing history. And another book I'm recommending to you to have a better understanding of the discourse and form your own opinion is this book, Ironsi, Nigeria, the Army, Power and Politics, written by Chuks Iluebunam. This book is a classical work on the story we are discussing. I did not bring the book Nzogu, written by Obasanjo. That is another classic you should read. So you can get this book on udarabooks.com. And you can also buy it on WhatsApp. The numbers are pinned to this broadcast. We are looking at history, politics, and power. I have recommended Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyiga. Now I am recommending Ironsi, Nigeria, the Army, Power, and Politics. It's about learning and unlearning. We are talking about Awolowo in the Nigerian Civil War. And when you talk about the war, one name that must come up is Ojukwu. So look at this book, Emeka, written by Frederick Forsyth. Emeka is a classical work if you want to know more about Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. You can get this book on udarabooks.com. I am discussing with Dr. Yemi Farumbi, looking at the background to the war, and the focus is on Obafemi Awolowo. We have talked about the August 11th, 1966 meeting of Yoruba leaders of thought, convened by the governor of the Western region, Colonel Adeyinka Adebayo. Dr. Farumbi says it was a meeting to rally the Yoruba nation to adopt a common position in the planned national constitutional discourse. But the meeting turned out to be an appeal for Awolowo to lead the Yoruba nation. It turned out to be a meeting where those that offended Awolowo came to ask for forgiveness. There was another meeting of Yoruba leaders of thought in Ibadan on the 1st of May, 1967. In that meeting, Obafemi Awolowo was elected by acclamation as the leader of the Yoruba people.
Yes, after Colonel Robert Adeyinka Adebayo came to the meeting to appeal to him, he made a speech, passionate speech. If your colleagues say you should lead them, accept to lead them. Of course, Adebayo himself didn't belong to the Awolowo school. It was Fajuyi who shared Awolowo's political philosophy. So he was one of those who needed accommodation by Awolowo. And of course, he was, he had this problem also with the farmers.
Agbekoya.
And it only required the intervention of Awolowo to stop it. In any case, and Awolowo said clearly, I will accept, but that as soon as political parties are allowed to emerge, I will stop being the leader of the Yorubas, because I don't expect all the Yorubas to be in my political party. And that was why in the latter days in his life, you never really made reference to him as leader of the Yorubas. You talked more about his president of UPN, leader of the UPN. From 1977 or 78, he really didn't see himself again as the leader of the Yorubas.
But today, has any man in the history of Yoruba nation assumed the status of Obafemi Awolowo?
The truth is that before him, Yoruba had no leader. And after him, we've not had one like that. I think he's the kind of person that you see one of them in 1 century or so. As a matter of fact, what had given Yoruba solidarity, the solidity they have today, is the quality of mind and action of Awolowo. Nobody ever governed the Yoruba together as one. Nobody. Not even in the days of Oyo Empire. All the Yorubas were never governed as one political unit.
Awolowo was able to bring the nation together.
And he did so well. So everybody became so proud to identify with him.
On the 1st of May 1967, Awolowo delivered a speech at that meeting. And that speech today is referred to as the 4 imperatives by some.
Yeah.
He makes the point that only a peaceful solution must be found to arrest the worsening stalemate in Nigeria at that time. Another imperative is that the eastern region must be encouraged to remain part
of Nigeria. Yeah.
And the third imperative is that if the eastern region is allowed by acts of omission or commission to secede from or opt out of Nigeria, then the western region and Lagos must also stay out of the federation. He made that point.
Yeah.
Why did he make that statement? What does that statement mean?
Very clear. You cannot have a Nigeria that is only the north and the west. That's the point he's making. If you're going to have a Nigeria, it's either to be of all of us or no Nigeria. And of course, he had the problem on hand, the northern troops. Either in that speech or in a subsequent speech, he said the northern troops must be withdrawn so that the Westerners can have also the freedom to take their own decision. And it was clear to him, if you force the East out, or you allow them to go, then the West must be allowed to go or must be deemed as having been forced out. That you're not going to have a situation, you will have a dominant North. And he has just come from prison, having tasted out of the, the bitter pill that northern leadership for oligarchy can inflict. We're not going to allow that to continue.
He makes the statement, any war by the North against the East on any account whatsoever would be an unholy crusade for which it won't be unjustifiable to shed a pint of blood. Awolowo had also said that any war against the East would be illegitimate unless it had the backing of the West and the Midwest.
So what he's saying is that if the North, as northern region, decided to wage a war on eastern Nigeria, they are on their own. But of course, second division was General Murtala Muhammad. They didn't even have a third division until we had problem in the Midwest. So they themselves didn't trust any other person, but was then ostensibly in the name of Nigeria. It was Federal Republic of Nigeria now fighting a war against Biafra. Whereas if they had chosen to fight as Northern Nigeria, I'm sure even the Midwest that passionately believed in Nigeria would have folded their hands.
You made mention of Awolowo demanding for the withdrawal of mostly northern troops from the Western region. Awolowo pulled out of the ad hoc committee, insisting that Gowon pulled out northern troops in the 3rd Battalion stationed in Ibadan. Awo saw it as an occupation troop. Quoting him, "We have neither military might nor the overwhelming advantage of numbers here in Western Nigeria and Lagos, but we have the justice of a noble and imperishable cause on our side." Can I say that Awolowo instigated the North to launch the war, knowing that the North will not want to lose the Yoruba state?
No, because he was not part of the government.
He was influential.
No.
He was the most prominent civilian at that time. Nnamdi Azikiwe was keeping a low profile.
No, in fact, he wasn't available. There was Anthony Nahoro who had emerged as a formidable force. But like I said, the circumstances of the Midwest dictated that the many ethnic nations there should support in Nigeria. The Yorubas could afford if they had their own military might. And that's why when I go back to 1962 and they said they wanted to stage a coup, people didn't even have local government police, not to talk of a battalion.
It was that bad.
Not that bad.
Perhaps the reason Babafemi Ogundipe was easily intimidated.
Absolutely. When he gave an instruction and the office, not the officer, the constable said, "I will check with my captain." When a brigadier general gives an instruction and the corporal says, "I will check with my captain," of course, you are not in charge.
That's mutiny.
Well, he could do nothing because he himself was surrounded. It was that preponderance that made it easy for them to overrun Ironsi and Faji in Ibadan now. They were surrounded by troops that were ethnically biased and were ethnically indoctrinated to see themselves as born to rule. Some of them might be regretting it now, like General Danjuma. When they look back at the role they played, the likes of General Leckworth, all of them, they are middle belters.
They were not Fulanis, and they were Christians.
They were Christians, but they didn't see it. They saw the omnibus north that they were defending, the Shagayas, the Leckworths, there's this town now in Plateau that had so many generals. They saw themselves as northern elites.
Are you talking about Lantang generals?
The Lantang generals. They saw themselves as northern elites. Events proved to them later that, yeah, there is enough, and there is enough. But later, they began to see themselves as middle belt. They thought the likes of Joseph Tucker and his fellow travelers were idiots They were lunatic to be fighting against the North, which they had. Yes, they controlled the fighting men, but they were not the officers. And they were being used. And they allowed themselves to be used because they were not politically alert. It took at least 2 decades for the Middle Belt to realize. Awolowo saw this. When they formed the UNBC, Awolowo supported them. When they formed, when Kashim Ibrahim, who was the grandfather of Kashim Imam, they supported the Asher Group. Asher Group was the leader, was the opposition in the North, in alliance with UNBC. They posted Ige, posted him in Jos. He was the lawyer to plead the case of the Middle Belter. But the Middle Belter didn't see the problem of their own. It is after the war, they were now beginning to see that yes, we are one North. But like they said in Animal Farms, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Now I'm sure they regret the role they played.
Why do you think they are regretting the role they played?
When you listen to Danjuma speak these days, in the last 10 years, or when you listen to General Leckwood, when he found himself almost being killed for the Zango Kataf issue, his little tribe, tried to defend them. He almost lost his life. Then he realized that really there is enough, and he is not part of it. You see that in Southern Kaduna, you see it in Southern Bauchi, you see it in Southern Gombe, where you have the minority tribes, predominantly either African religion or Christian, who are not even allowed to have equal access to power, political power. You saw it play out under Rufai in Kaduna State. So they now realize that what they thought was the monolithic North at that time was really that their numbers was being used by some elite to dominate Nigeria.
We are discussing history, politics, and power. Dayo Dada, thank you for joining the broadcast. We appreciate you. Remember, you can also call in. The numbers to call are pinned to this broadcast. We would like to hear from you, so you can call in and contribute to the discourse. The numbers are pinned to this broadcast. Francis Uyomo, thank you for watching. And as you watch, please share so that we can take the message further. Omotayo Oluwarotimi Onobamiro says that Awolowo approached him. He told my father he would like him to recruit officers for him from the army because he was a gifted man, that he was brainy. My father went to buy some books on all the coups that had taken place in the world. He read the books and he went back to tell the two the coup could not succeed. I think this must be Onobamiro's son.
Yes, I had always heard that book. Yeah.
Okay.
I've read, I would have loved that Professor Onobamiro wrote. He's his father, so.
Why did he not write his own story? The son says Awolowo told him to go and bring the books on coups and coup planning. Later, he called my father to say he was no longer plotting the coup. Okay. Let's more comment. Hassan Ayowole says, congratulations on your unveiling of the new studio. Thank you. Sunday Taiwo says, this is great. Nigeria will be great through our collective efforts. Keep your comments coming in, and you can also call. The number is 080-999-18449. The number is on the screen. The other number to call is 070-129-41837. So that's the number to call if you are interested in contributing to the discourse. Call. We are discussing Obafemi Awolowo and the Civil War. We've not entered the war proper. We are looking at the background to the war. And one book I think you should read is this one, entitled The People's General, or General of the People's Army. It's a collection of incisive articles on Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, edited by Chuks Iluegbunam, General of the People's Army. I recommend this book to you. You'll get it on udarabooks.com. You can also get it on the WhatsApp numbers displayed on the screen. Another book that will help you to understand the war is this one, written by Professor Akachi Ezigbo, Fact and Fiction in the Literature of the Nigerian Civil War. Fact and Fiction in the Literature of the Nigerian Civil War. That's another book you should read, because in the next 2 weeks, I'll be discussing the Civil War. I'll be bringing different authors of books to the studio. But Dr. Yemi Farumbi is my primary analyst on the subject of Awolowo. Have you read this book, Roses and Bullets, written by Professor Akachi Adimora Ezigbo? It's a great read. It's a fictional story on the war, like Chimamanda's book, Half of a Yellow Sun, a fictional story on the Civil War. Look at this, Half of a Yellow Sun. As we round off this discourse, remember Awolowo later became the number 2 man in the war. But we will not be able to discuss that today. Murtala Muhammad was eager to march on the eastern region. Zik kept a low profile. Do not forget he had gone on medical leave in London in October 1965. That was before the January coup. And returned later in February 1966. Ojukwu kept Michael Okpara in the cooler at the beginning of the crisis. He preferred the counsel of former Governor Akanu Ibiam, but at some point he had no option but to bring them in. Due to the battle for international recognition, Ojukwu brought in Zik as Biafra peace envoy. We'll get to that story. Awolowo pulled out of the ad hoc committee. I have mentioned that to you. Dr. Farumbi, I want us to round off on this note. Awo was elected chairman of the National Conciliation Committee. In this position, he led a powerful delegation to Enugu on the 6th of May, 1967, to meet Ojukwu to persuade him not to go to war. Let's look at that meeting between Awo and Ojukwu.
I think it was a very significant moment in the history of Nigeria, where you begin to think of whether there will be war or there will be no. Well, I don't have the record, but I have Bola Ije's personal story with me because he was there.
He was in that meeting.
Yeah. As one of the aides of Awolowo. I think that meeting couldn't have succeeded. Looking at it now, benefit of hindsight, because this was far too gone.
Far too gone.
Yeah. And what were they far too gone? They were seen every day truckloads, not of property, but of dead bodies. It was a daily occurrence. I have friends who told me this story later, who are my classmates at the University of Nigeria. When you want to forget this, what has happened, then they bring another dead person. Young, vibrant people who had hope yesterday, who have been destroyed, who have been killed, who have been slaughtered for what they didn't know about.
It was a pogrom?
Real pogrom.
End it. It's raining heavily now. I can't hear myself. The mic has gone off.
I can hear you. You know, we plugged this console to UPS.
Bring your mic.
What?
Oh my God, 140,000.
Some looters and sponsors of violence who control the political structures or encourage the formation of a new leadership team.
Be a global citizen and join the radio revolution on State Affairs. State Affairs with Edmond Obilo. Radio just got deeper. State Affairs with Edmond Obilo is live.
Good afternoon from Africa. This is State Affairs coming to you from State Affairs Studio here in Ibadan. My name is Edmond Obilo. I welcome you to another class of history, politics, and power. I hope you're good to go with me. Today, I'll be looking at the subject, Nigeria on gunpowder, the revolution and the aftermath. What revolution are we talking about? It is about Nigeria in the 60s. On Wednesday, Dr. Yemi Farumbi was here. We looked at history. In that discourse, we looked at Obafemi Awolowo, Ojukwu, and the Biafran War. If you missed that edition, you would find it on this page. So go on this page and listen to that edition. That edition is on Edmond Obilo's YouTube page. So you can subscribe to my YouTube page and get updated with the program. We are streaming on State Affairs app. So if you are using Android phone, download the app on Google Play Store. We are also streaming on State Affairs app. You can download it if you are using an iPhone. Go on Apple Store and download the app. The subject of discourse on this edition is the revolution and the aftermath. Let me give you a background to the discourse. The revolution I talk about is the January 15th, 1966 coup. Is it a revolution? My guest will answer that question. The Nigerian military, in a bloody operation, truncated the democracy of the First Republic when young military officers, including Major Kaduna Nzogu, struck on the 15th of January, 1966. They decimated the leadership of that era. The Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa was killed. Also killed were the premiers of the western and northern regions. Top civilian and military officers were not left out in the orgy of death. It marked a new era in Nigeria's politics, and we are going into that era. In a radio broadcast announcing Nigeria's first military coup, Major Kaduna Nzogu said the country's enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 100%. Nzogu attacked those that seek to keep the country divided permanently in order to remain in office as VIPs. In that coup speech, he condemned the tribalist, the nepotist, those that make the country look big for nothing before the international system. Nzogu blamed them for corrupting the society by their words and deeds. In the address, he promised law-abiding Nigerians freedom from fear and all forms of oppression. However, the promise of freedom did not come as the military found itself in a crisis that snowballed into a civil war. The war that came at the time was a war that took the life of more than 1 million Nigerians. Before the war, there was the 29th July 1966 counter coup, led by mostly northern officers. Military officers, mostly of Igbo extraction, were taken out in the counter-coup in apparent resolution of the malice of the first coup carried out by mostly Igbo officers. On Wednesday on this program, Yemi Farumbi argued that it was not an Igbo coup. What do you think? You are part of this discourse. You can always leave your comment, and you can always call. Soon we are going to flash the numbers to call on the screen. It is about history. It is about going into the past to define the future. The coups of 1966 came with vengeance, hate, ethnicity, religion, and corruption. Building the state on these doctrines, as the military did, caused Nigeria to follow the road of underdevelopment, anarchy, and discontent. When Nzogu and his collaborators struck in 1966, the Nigerian state was jolted to the belief that a new dawn has come with radical changes for the goodness of the people. This was not to be, as the coup was hijacked by the head of the army, General Aguiyi Ironsi. But he was later killed in a counter-coup in July 1966. Why was he killed? Apparently, for not dealing decisively with the coup plotters that truncated the First Republic, and perhaps for turning the country into a unitary state from its previous federal arrangement. I have given you a background to the discourse. We are starting from the 1960s. We'll progress to the 1970s. We'll get to the 1980s. At some point, we will go back to pre-colonial Nigeria. It's about history. It's about politics. It's about power. Let me welcome my guest. My guest is the author of the book, Nigeria on Gunpowder, The Climax of Misrule. Can you see the book? My guest is the author of this book. So this class is like a book reading. My guest would explain some of the definitions he made in this book. Let me introduce the book to you. The book has been described as one that has the capacity to charge with laying the foundation for knowledge, the knowledge of politics. The book looks into the past, extracts the moment it was written, and projected into the future. The author will explain. My guest is Dr. Victor Olutaiwo. Mr. Victor Taiwo, welcome to State Affairs Studio.
Edmund, I'm very happy to be here.
Hello.
I want to congratulate you on this studio. And this is very, very amazing. And when I was coming in a vehicle the other time, I was telling my people that this man, Obilo, is trying to create kind of unprecedented situation in Africa in the history of journalism. And I think you are proving right now with what I'm saying here. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
You know, I've always loved this book.
I know.
And I'm happy you have gone to reprint the book.
Oh, yes.
And why did you reprint the book?
Well, due to popular demand all over the world. Yes, especially in the academics. People, they see it has been very valuable, especially for research students, PhD students, master students, and so. So the demands were too overwhelming. So I said, well, let me make a lot of effort to get it reprinted, and it is really going all over the world.
It was first written in 1999.
1994, 95.
Okay.
That's 28 years ago.
What spurred you to write the book at the time?
Well, that's a great question. I am a lover of history. I'm a lover of the welfare of the people. And I know that if you don't know where you are coming from, there's no way you can determine where you are going. You have to know the history of your surroundings and to be able to project into the future. So I saw the situation in Nigeria as being too abysmal. And I discovered that I saw no hope in Nigeria. Looking at the history, the foundation laid by Lugard and the British, it was all a fraud. So nothing good can come out of fraud. So the thing resonated into the problems we have been having in Nigeria, things becoming worse. So when it was 1993, I was formerly part of Campaign for Democracy. Then sometime in 1993 or early 94, I think 93, when this election of Abiola was turned down, annulled, I said, wow, I don't see any future in this country anymore. I was justified by my assertion that the foundation of Nigeria will never bring anything good to us. So I had to visit my chairman, the chairman of the CD, Campaign for Democracy. That was Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti. I think you know him. You should know him.
Yes, Fela's younger brother.
Yes, I went to him in Lagos. I was writing about it. I booked an appointment to see him, and he gave me an appointment. When I saw him, I discussed with him. I said, well, doctor, the way I'm seeing Nigeria, I don't think it can remain united for life. I think everything should start thinking of building its own territory. That let's, to your 10th whole history, let us start preparing for our own Yoruba nation. The Igbos may be preparing for their nation and not the rest. I narrated all my hypotheses. It was like, is this man okay? His gesticulation really showed that he did not see any sense in what I was talking. And at the end of the day, he said, well, I wish you best of luck. So the point I'm trying to derive is that my merely sitting down with him for a few minutes will not convince him. So I now said, what can I do? How many people will I sit down with to convince? Why can't I write a book, a very powerful book that will be self-explanatory, very instructive. Merely picking it and reading it, you get all the facts you want to get. That was what actually spurred me into writing the book. And it really worked. I will give you an example. When I wrote the book in manuscript, I went to Chief Bola Ige. I was trying to sensitize him about what I told Beko that he did not grasp. And I love Bola Ige for one thing. He always loves young men of intellect. And he really engaged me. We really engaged each other. For about 1 hour, we were making hot arguments. He gave me all the room. So I was canvassing for the construction of our Yoruba nation. He was on the side of Nigeria. So the table was left for the two of us. At a stage, I said, well, Baba, I usually call him Baba. I said, Baba, you see, this your Nigeria thing. Even your guy did it and regretted. He shocked. He said, which Oga? I said, Awolowo. Awolowo? What do you mean? Victor, do you have the tape? Do you have the facts? Do you have this? Do you have that? He said, yes. I have my facts. Can you let me have your facts? You know, I was carrying the manuscript, a very big log. I pulled it out of my bag. Page, read this. Meanwhile, we were having a meeting with him. My organization was having a meeting with him 3 or 4 days after that event. We were already booked for an appointment. So by the time we got to the table for discussion, you know, Bola was a fast reader, like you, I think. He had finished the whole book to convince me of your aspiration. You made the point, and today, you continue to toe your line. Then he told me that when he finished reading the book, he had to call his wife. That is a young man that God has given us in this country. He has written a book and he has been able to convince me that we have to fight for our Yoruba nation. And he said they both knelt down and prayed to God doing thanksgiving for giving them a young man of vision like this. So how many people have read the book that have been convinced of my point of reasoning? I cannot say. So my purpose of writing the book has been achieved.
So Bola Ige read the manuscript of this book.
Oh, yes.
Did he make any contribution? Did he suggest?
No suggest. He took everything hook, line, and sinker. It was all accolades for me. Nothing, no subtraction.
You know, when I read it the first time,
yeah,
and I read it again,
yeah,
I said, yes, a powerful book of history on my table.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a copy. And you said the book is no longer available.
Oh, yes.
But I'm happy that the book is now available.
Oh, yes. Now
People can now read the book.
Yes.
So the book I am talking about is entitled Nigeria on Gunpowder, The Climax of Misrule. Look at it. You see the book? It's a big book. We are talking about 531 pages. A book of history on Nigeria. And the author of the book, Victor Taiwo, is in State Affairs Studio. We are going to review a chapter of the book. Chapter 8 is entitled The Revolution and the Aftermath. The revolution you talk about here is the 15th of January, 1966 coup. Why did you target a revolution?
Yes, thank you. Before I answer that question, I think I should have to say this. I have to thank you, Edmond, for opening this studio and this program for history exposition, because it is a shame that our educational system has so much collapsed that our university students don't know anything about the past of this country. They don't know anything. Ask them, mention any name to them, any name that that existed in the last 30 years. They don't know, because they don't have any history or any book of history to read. They don't know anything about their past. So there's no way they can determine how to move ahead. This book, without being immodest, it is a compendium of Nigeria's history from the time immemorial, through the colonial period, through the political period. Agitation for independence, military, and all the rest. So I want to appreciate you for opening the minds of the youth into knowing the history of their country. So I want to eulogize you for this great feat.
Thank you.
Now, answer your question. When they say revolution, revolution is the simple definition I will give it is bringing into happening something that is so sudden, so that happens so quickly, unexpectedly, that things that people don't expect that will happen.
Like a soul.
Like, yes, thank you very much. So that was exactly what happened at that time. The country had been in a kind of crisis, political crisis, and emanating from this foundation problem. Everything goes back to the foundation.
were we really one? Before we became Nigerians, were we once? I mean, were we one entity? We were not. We were strange bedfellows. The Northerners, the Fulanis, the Hausas were not related to the Yorubas. The Yorubas were not related to the Igbos. The Jaws were not related to the Kanuris. You know, the British just came to lump everybody together. So the effect is that, okay, who is ruling? The Northerners are ruling. Are they ruling well? Who is ruling? The Southerners are ruling. Are they ruling well? Who is ruling? The Easterners are ruling. Are they ruling well? If somebody doesn't do anything that you like, then the other person might snap. So this is exactly what happened. The country was in a political crisis. And so people felt that the Northerners were in charge, even though people say it was not a tribal crisis. I mean, tribal issue. But we know that the Northerners were in charge then, but everything was topsy-turvy.
When you say the Northerners were in charge, can you break that down?
Yeah. Who was the Prime Minister? Tafawa Balewa. He was the man holding power, the mantle of power, the practical power, the executive power. So he was in charge of the country. And things were not going on well. And some young men in the military felt that there must be a change in the system. Though it was not only the Igbos that carried out the coup. I know that one of my kinsmen, Adewale Ademega, is a Yoruba person. Was a Yoruba person. It's late now. He was involved in it. Okay, just let me say, young military men felt that they should effect a change, and they planned a coup. Unfortunately, it did not succeed.
Before we go further,
yeah,
as a historian, was it an Igbo coup?
It might not be, it might be, but the results show that it was an Igbo coup. Because if you see the list of people that died, that were killed, how many Igbo was there? How many Igbo people were there? Let us ask ourselves. The predominant people that were killed were Northerners and the Westerners. No Igbo man lost his life in the coup. Why? Was it an accident? Was it an accident? Was it a coincidence that no Igbo person went along with the coup? So it could be concluded that it was an Igbo coup, because that was the result.
And if you look at the intentions of the coup,
yes,
would you still call it an Igbo coup?
The intention was very good as far as I'm concerned. But there were some elements who spilled the beans, who really wrecked the ambition of the masterminds. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So for some people to have spared certain part of the country, people from certain part of the country, and allow other people to die, then it will be given a meaning.
From the analysis of this chapter,
yes,
the North was in charge.
Yes.
The North instigated the political crisis.
Yes.
And the coupists wanted to deal with that crisis.
Yes.
And what do you think the coupists would go after? It's not those who instigated it.
Oh, yes.
And some of the instigators were in the Western region.
Oh, yes.
They were not in the Eastern region.
Were they not in the Eastern region?
Tell me more.
We might say the leader was a Northerner, but were we not having other political office holders in the East?
But again, remember, the crisis was centered in the Western region.
Yes.
And the crisis was directed from the Northern region.
Yes.
It was the Northern region and the Western region that were really in crisis.
Yes.
But the epicenter of the crisis was the Western region.
Okay.
So when the coup struck,
yes,
they took out the instigators of the crisis.
Yes.
And they were within the Northern and the Western region.
If they did not want to create problem for themselves, they would have made it an all-round operation.
Would you take out those who were not the instigator?
Let me that I won't mention the system.
Okay. In this chapter, should I say you didn't have kind words for Nnamdi Azikiwe?
Yeah.
He was not in the country when the coup is struck.
Yes.
You think he got wind of information?
Of course, it has been established.
But he left in October.
Yes.
About three months before the coup. So when you say it has been established, what do you know?
The point is that events that happened later show that Azikiwe was in the knowledge. I mean, he was in the know of the crisis before he fled. So he was. They were very good friends.
Okay.
And he couldn't have pretended not to have known what was going to happen before he fled. So Azikiwe knew about the coup before he fled.
Akintola knew about the coup from my research.
Okay.
Ahmadu Bello knew there was going to be a coup.
Okay.
But they took it for granted.
Okay.
Should you still blame Azikiwe?
Well, as the governor general, things to do.
Okay.
At least of the coup, as the governor general, was he supposed to feel unconcerned?
But you said governor general that really had no power.
It doesn't matter. At least he was still the governor general, whether he had power or not. He was the governor general, whether ceremonial or executive or whatever. He was still the secretary, the governor general. He would have done everything possible to make sure that there was sanity. But now, he pretended that just nothing was going to happen.
Let's look at some of the causative factors that you wrote about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said the position of Professor K.C. Ware is at this junction very pertinent and should be considered for its incontestable rationality. He posited, so I want to read his statement, that the capacity of states to work a federal union is also greatly influenced by their size. It is undesirable that one or two units should be so powerful that they can overrule the orders and bend the will of the federal government to themselves. You went for that to quote him, that the size of the units concerned in wealth, area, and population is therefore of prime importance. Before you quoted him, you made the point that the compelling forces emanated from two premises: the extant political disgust and the stinking military setup. With the Independence Constitution of 1957-58, the British went ahead to bequeath the legacy of the defiance of all moral protestation. Explain.
You see, as I said, let me make an analogy that I just made in one of my write-ups. There is an executive who has a 30-story building. So there was a crack in his office, 30th floor. And you had to call the engineer that constructed the edifice. There is a crack, please come and mend it. And the engineer had to go down to the basement. So he did not know why the engineer went to the basement. He now was not disturbed. Engineer, where are you now? Come and fix this thing. The man said, sir, the crack you are seeing here is not to be mended here, but right from the foundation, because the cause was from the foundation. That's why I went to the basement. Lord Lugard said something in one of his books, which let me remember the title of the book: the Dual Mandate of the British in Tropical Africa. Have you ever read the book?
No.
The Dual Mandate of British in Tropical
Okay, by Lord Lugard. Yes.
He confessed in the book that Europeans did not come to Africa to help them, but to fight for their own economic interest. It was a brazen confession. It was a brazen confession. So whatever they did, you should not blame him. You should not blame the British. They have confessed that they came here for their own economic purposes. Whatever is your problem is your problem. They don't care.
But
so
you blame them in this.
Yes, I have to blame them. I have to blame them because they are insensitive. They are being insensitive. They are being happens to the people. So talking of the people bequeathing bastardized military, it was part of the ploy. Ploy of I don't care what happens to you people. They knew that the composition of the military was not balanced. And they felt that, well, just their own problem. And everything evolved into the crisis. 1919.
The federal.
You see the same thing we are talking about. Imbalance, insanity, altruism. We are still talking the same thing.
You said in population and land mass,
yes,
the northern region was deliberately designed,
yes,
to be larger than the eastern, and western regions put together.
Oh yes.
Why was it designed that way?
It was because okay, let me make an analysis. Okay, there is a loaf of bread on ground. There are 3 families to partake in the loaf, and you have 10 members of the family. I have 2. My friend has 3. And definitely you want to distribute on the basis of the largeness of the families. Who is going to have the larger part? I mean, the largest part? You, of course. So this is one of the ploys. It's a way of benefiting the northerners. And there is a politics behind it.
What is the politics?
The politics, thank you. Let me see what analogy I can use again. Okay. Edmond Obilo is a very brilliant man. He knows his onions. He knows that nobody can cheat him. But maybe because I'm illiterate, maybe primary school holder, I may not actually know the intricacies of the issue on grant, so I can be taken for granted. So if the exploiter wants to adopt a person for the distribution of the loaf, who do you think he will appoint? The non-entity, of course. Because he can manipulate me. He cannot manipulate Obilo. It's too to be manipulated.
So who is the non-entity in this?
Nobody knows. Can you compare the West with the North? Were they educated? How many of them were educated at that time? When we were talking of the firsts in professions, talk of first doctor, first lawyer, first architect, first this, first that, they were always from the West and the East. How many firsts did you get from the North? So they could better exploit the Northerners than these crazy people, crazy quote and unquote. These brilliant people, these highly intellectual people who cannot be manipulated. So they see it has been sensible to tilt towards the non-entity, so to say.
You know, this argument you make, Paulani Wajaim
I don't know what happened, but last, we'll get to the truth. We'll know who's saying the truth and who is not. So, the first guy kind of agreed that it's not an Igbo coup. That is of interest, right? The need for them to turn the country to a different direction. I support his argument. He supports his argument. Now, to this historian, they're saying that yes, the motive is not an Igbo coup, but the outcome says otherwise. He's trying so hard to see differently from the first guy. That's what I noticed. But anyway, last. We'll get to the truth. And hopefully we set us free. Whatever that means.
One thing that you need to know is that there is no Christmas like that Christmas of Nigeria. Oh, that Christmas in Nigeria is so much fun. The best Christmas in the world is going to be where? It's going to be in Nigeria, December. That's where you need to be. That's where the fun is at. But now listen. Now I'm on the flight, right? I'm going to Nigeria. This flight is leaving from where? From Johannesburg. So in the flight, it's a lot of Nigerians that live in South Africa that they are going home for Christmas, okay? Did I know that there's so many Nigerians? I saw them at the airport that day. They are going to Nigeria. They're going back home for Christmas. They bought everything from Woolworths. they bought everything from Woolworths, Game, Bep, all the stores. I see them. They are going back home for Christmas. So I have to be on this flight with these Nigerians. Okay, fine. So we get on the flight. Flight is moving. Everyone is happy on the flight. The vibes are vibing. Like this flight, everyone is excited to go home. Everyone is talking. Everyone is laughing. So, you know, we are also just sitting next to a nice guy. We're just talking. The next thing, you know, for me, I'm like, okay, this flight, we're just here in Africa. We're going to another African country. You know, this shouldn't be a long flight. I think it was 6 hours or something like that. Man, guys, 7th hour. I think I was tired, so I fell asleep. I'm like, man, we are still on this flight. Hi, man, the flight is not landing. The guy sitting next to me, the guy says, you've been sleeping since. And I'm like, what's going on? He said, there's trouble now. I'm like, what's going on? Apparently, there's traffic in Lagos. Did I even know this? I didn't even know this, guys. I didn't even know this was a thing. Man, there is traffic in Lagos. There is no parking space for our flight, okay? So the flight is roaming around the air because we don't have space to land in Lagos. At this point, we have been roaming around forever, and I think the airplane is going to run out of petrol. It was horrible. And then when it's going to be an announcement, everyone is like, shh, we are all hoping for good. We are all hoping for good news. We want space. We want parking space, guys, for the airplane. There is no parking space in Lagos. The spaces are full. Everyone is coming from all over the world. I didn't know this, like, that everyone comes, like, so much, you know, come back home for Christmas to a point that there's no space to park at the airport. You know, they've been updating us what's going on. So now they're like, oh, no, it looks like we might have to go and land in a neighboring country. What's the neighboring? Damn, I forgot the neighboring country. But guys, it's possible that we might have to land in a neighboring country. And then people will take other means of transportation to actually make it to their country. I was like, oh, what the hell? I've never had such a thing, guys. Can you imagine? It's like, I'm going to South Africa. When we get to Joburg, we're in the sky. Then there's no parking. And then they tell us, no, you might go to go land in Zimbabwe. I would be so frustrated. Everyone got frustrated in the flight. But one thing about Nigerians, guys, they will pray. If I tell you, so I'm like, they announced that we might have to go land in a neighboring country. And then the guy next to me didn't even say, let's pray. I just said, Father God, oh, and then the whole plane is praying. The whole plane is praying. Oh my God. We keep roaming around, and every time there's an announcement, everyone is just like waiting in anticipation because everyone is hoping for good news. And then finally, they announced that, oh, we found the parking. Oh, God, oh, thank God, oh, God, oh, God. What a miracle working God. I mean, I would do it again, guys. I would roam in the sky again for that Lagos Christmas. I would risk it again and get on the flight and look for parking for 2 hours to get to that Lagos Christmas. That's how huge this Christmas is. This is like the most important Christmas. If you've never been to a Lagos Christmas, shame, I'm sorry, you're not African.
Man, what's going on? All right. Is anybody following the retreat? The ministerials and China Sky. Oh, sorry, I get message coming in.